Hi, I'm Sushant and welcome to this online tutorial by Quest. Neurology is a branch of medical riddles, and yet there are some diseases that always present as medical emergencies. We need to diagnose swiftly and act faster. One such disease is what is known as Guillain-Barré or Guillain-Barré syndrome. In this tutorial, let's talk about GBS. At the basis of GBS is a phenomena known as molecular mimicry. Most patients of GBS in the past 1 month would have a history of either a respiratory tract infection or a GI tract infection. Variety of organisms have been implicated in these infections, but the commonest remains Campylobacter jejuni. Some viruses like Epstein-Barr virus or cytomegalovirus could be involved, or Mycoplasma could be one of the infections that can lead to GBS. In some series, vaccinations like the influenza vaccine have also been implicated. And interestingly, other diseases like Hodgkin's disease, lupus, or HIV can be associated with GBS. If you look at the infection background, patients after infection tend to mount an immune response. Under the influence of CD4 lymphocytes, the B cells would start producing antibodies to protect against the organisms. But these antibodies sometimes could cross-react against our own self. These tend to cross-react against molecules known as gangliosides. Gangliosides are present over the neurons as well as the Schwann cells that cover the neurons. One such anti-ganglioside antibody is anti-GM1. This is in fact one of the commonest antibodies seen in patients with GBS. What anti-GM1 does is that along with complement, it tends to destroy the myelin sheath, or sometimes it might even destroy the axons. Destruction of myelin sheath would lead to demyelination, and we all know that the myelin sheath is important for faster conduction. Therefore, destruction of myelin sheath would lead to eventually a conduction block. This is the commonest variety of GBS in what is also known as acute, inflammatory, demyelinating polyneuropathy. The good part, however, is that since the axon is not damaged, recovery can be good in patients who have only demyelination. In some patients, due to reasons not completely understood, axons can be damaged, and in such patients, recovery tends to be poorer. One interesting anti-ganglioside is anti-GQ1B. The interesting part here is this ganglioside is largely seen in those nerves that supply the extraocular muscle. Therefore, patients having these antibodies tend to have predominant involvement of the eye muscles. This is what is known as the Miller-Fisher syndrome, which is a part of GBS. Looking at the clinical features of GBS now, the most important feature is an ascending motor paralysis. Within a matter of hours to days, patients can have involvement of the entire lower limbs, the trunk, as well as the upper limbs. A very dangerous phenomenon is that this might ascend right up to the bulbar muscles. Now, when I say bulbar muscles, I mean two things. First, patients could have cranial nerve involvement, and the commonest among that is facial nerve. Almost 50% of patients would have some amount of facial nerve weakness. But the more dangerous involvement in the bulb is that of the respiratory apparatus. If the respiratory muscles are involved, that means patient is going to require ventilatory support. In fact, 1 out of 3 patients of GBS would eventually require a ventilatory support. As the paralysis is progressing, most patients would reach their complete level of paralysis within as soon as 1 day to up to 4 weeks. But it's important to remember that if the paralysis continues to progress after 4 weeks, it is unlikely to be GBS and we need to think of other causes. Also, the good news about this paralysis is that in most patients, especially those who have demyelinating variety, 85% of them would eventually end up recovering. But this paralysis is happening because of involvement of multiple motor nerves. That means this is a lower motor neuron type of paralysis. Therefore, patients will experience a flaccid paralysis. And when we examine these patients, they would have areflexia. Areflexia is one of the most important signs to identify patients of GBS. GBS can also involve the sensory nerves, but this involvement is not very prominent. For example, patients might initially feel that their legs are becoming heavy or rubbery. As the disease progresses upwards, they might complain of backaches, and sometimes later on they might complain of pain in the affected areas. But it is important to remember sensory symptoms are never the prominent symptoms, and if they are, then we should think of alternative diagnosis like the involvement of spinal cord. On the same lines, bladder involvement is again not a prominent symptom of GBS. If at all the bladder is involved, that is going to be a transient involvement, and therefore bladder involvement should again make us think of the spinal cord. Autonomic nerves, however, are very frequently involved in GBS. This would manifest either in form of dangerous arrhythmias or fluctuations in blood pressure and fluctuations in heart rate. Now, one variant, those who have the anti-GQ1B antibody, can have a triad of ataxia, areflexia, and ophthalmoplegia. This is what is known as the Miller-Fisher syndrome. Remember, GBS is a clinical diagnosis. And before we diagnose GBS, we should always consider a list of differential diagnoses. The topmost involvement we should think of in a patient with ascending paralysis is whether or not it's a spinal cord involvement. And another mimicker which would look similar is a hyperkalemic or hypokalemic periodic paralysis. There are two investigations that might help us. First is the electrodiagnostic studies. Here we could identify which kind of peripheral neuropathy the patient has. Another test of importance is the examination of CSF. Now, CSF classically would have elevated proteins because of inflammation. However, since there is no infection, the cell count tends to be normal. This is known as cytoalbuminogenic dissociation. Remember, if a patient of suspected GBS has high cell counts, we should look at alternative diagnosis like infections or sarcoidosis. Once we have clinically thought of GBS, our treatment needs to be very rapid. We need to stabilize the patient and start our therapy as soon as possible. The target of our therapy is to prevent the inflammation from damaging any further axons. And the earlier that we intervene, better is going to be the recovery. In fact, if we delay it beyond 2 weeks, there is a doubt if our therapy is ever going to work at all. Now, the drug of choice is intravenous immunoglobulin. We believe that by giving this immunoglobulin, we will be able to halt the autoantibodies from damaging the neurons. An alternative to this could be plasma exchange or plasmapheresis. However, plasmapheresis is not easily available in centers beyond the tertiary care centers. The fallout of IVIG, however, is the cost. It tends to be a very costly therapy and out of reach for a lot of our patients. It is important to remember that even if this is an autoimmune process, none of our trials support the use of glucocorticoids. In fact, in a patient who tends to have autonomic dysfunction, use of steroids might only complicate the matters. So it's best to not use steroids in a patient of GBS. Remember, 1 in 3 patients is going to require ventilatory support. So all of these patients need to be monitored in the ICUs. Also, they are going to be bedridden for quite some time because of the paralysis, and it will take weeks to recover. So a good supportive care to prevent bed sores and to prevent pulmonary complications is very important. The commonest cause of death for patients who have had respiratory involvement is the pulmonary complications. So I repeat, a good supportive care is of paramount importance. To summarize, GBS is one of the most important emergencies in neurology. We have to identify these as patients who have areflexic ascending paralysis. Molecular mimicry, especially as a response to infections or to vaccines, is at the basis of this disease. And there could be 2 varieties, either demyelinating or an axonal one, and demyelinating ones tend to have better prognosis. Once we have made a clinical diagnosis of GBS, we should promptly start therapy, and IVIG or plasmapheresis remains the prime therapy. Patients will improve with ventilatory support, and a good supportive care is required for an overall better prognosis. If you have any questions on this topic, feel free to discuss with me on the Quest app. Thank you and Jai Hind.